I'm gonna tweet out essentially, was this game or last night's game for on the day of recording, Chelsea beating Atletico 2-0 at Stamford Bridge, would you say that's a better game than the Europa League final against Arsenal? Because, you know, when you and I were talking on WhatsApp and we were saying this is the best we've seen Chelsea in years, you know, the thought occurred to me, actually, that's the best performance since the Europa League final, I think. So how would you answer that anyway, before we sort of analyse the game?
Yeah, I mean, that was my sort of gut feeling, and I think it is. I think the argument you would make is that it's a higher level than the Europa League. Atletico Madrid, the pedigree of Atletico Madrid compared to Arsenal in the Champions League is really much, you know, it's night and day, isn't it, in terms of the competition they give you. So I think just generally, yeah, if you want to be compare the two performances, it is the best one since Baku, probably. There were some really good performances individually in 1920 that I could pick out. But in terms of the magnitude of this performance, in terms of what I think it means for the club, a bit like when we spoke about Liverpool on our first episode, I think that's in relation to the Premier League. I think this is massive. I think the perfection in that performance was incredible. It felt, once again, as I described when we were speaking about Liverpool, it felt to me brilliant because it blended what we loved about old Chelsea, but there was a sense that this team can go in a new direction, and it was wonderful. So yeah, I would agree with you. Best since Baku. But to me, I think it probably is the best performance in Europe or the Champions League since PSG. You'd have to say, right? You know, in terms of Chelsea's ability, the fact in the last few years, in the last 16, we've looked like a team not able to compete. You know, we've been outmatched, outgunned pretty consistently. So to be able to break that hoodoo, I think there's still been a lot of stuff said about Atletico, how poor they were. That was the same was said about Tottenham, the same was said about Liverpool. I think at some point you do have to go, this is a quality team who've done a lot of great things in the Champions League in recent years. They beat Liverpool last year away from home. That's why I was so sort of cautious about this game, because of their history in second leg ties. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
As well, hearing Simeone after the game, he just said, you know, there's no excuses. We were out-coached, and we've spoken about this a couple of times now. We're going to hear a lot when Chelsea win games that the other team were poor. But I think it's just the way that Tuchel's running things, it takes a sting out of the opposition team. And I hear the PSG shout as well. I think maybe you could even argue that game was up there with Napoli 2012.
This group of players that I had serious doubts about, I think probably I think most Chelsea fans did, and I don't think people should apologise for having those doubts, because I think we could see what was going on. I mean, these players weren't producing these type of performances, and I'm not only speaking about this season, I'm speaking about previous seasons as well. I think this result is not, I'm not just going to contextualise it in 2021. I think we have to look back to a few seasons, because I think that's why I think when you build it up with all the other seasons and the failure in the Champions League and us not feeling like we can compete on this stage and trying to get back to a level we were at before, like 10 years ago, I think that's what makes it so impressive, and why I don't think you can understate how big of a result and performance this was for Chelsea.
Who is it that you would, or which few players would you like to sort of single out for praise, I guess? Because I don't really believe any player on the pitch is due criticism, because that's how good the performance was. I don't really think anyone put a foot wrong. You could argue Aspie's possible penalty shout, which I would have wanted if I were Atleti. I understand that it's soft, but I would have wanted it. But who would you or which few players would you single out for specific praise?
I mean, it's hard because I could go through about nearly all the team. I mean, I think Edouard Mendy, what he's given to that team, we spoke about him the other day in relation to Leeds. He didn't have to do much.
Have you seen his save percentage? Have you seen his save percentage in the Champions
League? I haven't,
League?
But I'm pretty sure it's ridiculously high given the amount of clean sheets.
It's 95%. It's 95%.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It really is. Yeah. So I think on that sense, Mendy, what he's given to the club this year, the value of that signing has been incredible, what it's done. Kurt Zuma playing in the middle of a back three, which I don't think is his best position, but the aggression and the calm nature he played that role in last night was like, the way he did it, the way he asserted himself was just wonderful. Antonio Rudiger with, I think you could argue a few of the performances recently have been the best performance of his Chelsea career. I think more and more as I see Rudy now, I think that injury really did hurt him. I think it was something that really knocked him back last season, because now we're seeing a consistent run of games.
Also, we're talking about Kovacic and Kante. My dad thought Kovacic was man of the match. I personally think it was Kante, but what I liked was Kai was dropping so deep, and it was almost at points where he would take the ball from the centre-backs and bypass the midfielders to allow them to remain in shape and focus on what their job is, and to avoid having to play through them, because he has the ability to just travel with the ball so far. And that really, I think, disorientated Atleti, who were sort of set up to break our passing lines. And what Havertz done, the way Tuchel seems to utilise him, was to bypass those lines and just go straight there. And that is a flawless skill, to be honest, to be able to surge 50, 60 yards up the pitch. And he's done it multiple times. Who was your man of the match?
I think I have to give it to Kante. I think it'd be a little bit silly not to give it to Kante. And Kante's been my man of the match in several games recently. Saturday, and I have to talk about this because we discussed it on the pod before. His passing, I thought his passing was wonderful last night. I think everything last night was wonderful, but someone brought up, I think it was Expected Chelsea, which is a great sort of stats based account around Chelsea. And he was talking about sort of the intelligence within Kante's game, to the weight of pass, the type of pass. He was sometimes knowing when to hit a quicker pass to one of the forward players. I think the way we played the ball from deep in between the lines, which has been a problem for Chelsea in recent weeks, that sort of frustration of playing a ball quicker to those attacking players. We saw it a lot last night, and that was wonderful. And Kante was a massive part of that. I don't know if he's Guardian journalist, but he's on the Guardian pod. Philippe Auclair, I think his name is.
Philippe Auclair. He's France Football. France
Football. He was speaking about Kante, and he was saying that this phrase of Kante is everywhere. That's what we say about Kante, and it's not the fact that he's everywhere; it's the fact he knows where to be. He's so intelligent. He's always in the right place at the right time. He always spots where the ball's going to go. I mean, this guy is just superhuman. I just don't understand, especially the 93rd minute. He's chasing after that ball. He's sprinting down the pitch. He wins the header from a throw-in, and he's trying to create that extra man to make it a 3-on-1. It's just extraordinary. And there's been so much debate around Kante in recent years, around his fitness, around his future. And Tuchel was very adamant when he arrived at Chelsea that he loved N'Golo and said, I've always wanted to have this player. And we were a little bit sort of like, is this sort of just a PR move to get him back on side? But the fact he's been able to get Kante back to the levels he was at this age, he probably can't play 2 games a week. You may not see him play on Sunday because of just what he's given to Chelsea. And it's nice that you do have the confidence in Jorginho to step back in now, and Georgie and Cover have formed a good, and it's a game that probably is suited to both of them given the way it's probably going to pan out. So having Kante back to those levels and that level of performance, it just takes Chelsea to another level. I mean, to me, last night, when he performs like that, he's the best midfielder in the world. I don't care what anyone says. When Kante is like that, not only does he give Chelsea every single chance, it's the player I saw in 16-17 when he arrived under Antonio Conte, and just was amazed watching him, the way he transformed our midfield.